Hey guys, thanks for stopping on in for today's video where we're going to take a look at how all these primary results turned out yesterday for the competitive districts, or what are viewed to be as some of the more competitive districts for the 2018 general election. So these are going to include states like California, Iowa, Montana, New Jersey, and New Mexico. And we're going to take a look at how the vote played out and where it's looking like it's positive or negative on either the Democrat or Republican side. It is worth noting that in these primary elections, you're going to get a little bit different of a electorate than what you're going to get over in the general election. So these are going to be people that are either more politically active in general or older demographics, people that don't have extremely busy lives. So more of your retired type voters are going to be voting in primaries more often in comparison to your younger voters or those that have families and things like that and a lot on their plate where they just don't have enough time to go out and vote in primary scenarios where they would make more of an effort to do so in a general election. So that is something to keep in mind, and why things tend to maybe slide a little bit more over to the GOP's side of things in some of these primary results. But still, nonetheless, we're going to take a look at this data and how it might play itself out. So not every race is going to have a competitive primary on both the Democrat and Republican side. And then, of course, you have California, where both the Democrats and Republicans all run on the same ticket. And whoever are the two top vote getters go to the general election in November. So we're going to start off here with the likely Democratic seats and then just move our way down until we get to the likely Republican seats. But again, these are all of the districts that are viewed by the Cook Political Report as being competitive come the 2018 general election. I'll link everything that I use in this video down in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. So we're going to start here with the likely Democrat districts, and we start here with the California 7th. And as you can see here, the incumbent was able to get over 50% of the vote, which is always very important in these situations. It's a good sign to see your incumbent get over 50% of the vote if you're the Democrats in this scenario in what's likely a Democratic seat. The GOP split up the rest of the vote, it looks like, but still at the end of the day, it does look like a positive sign over there for the Democrats that they were able to get the majority of the vote in District 7. So moving on down here, none for Iowa, none for Montana, and then New Jersey, we have the 5th district. So we'll go over and find that result. And we have an incumbent on the Democrat side, and it was unopposed, so we don't have the data over there, unfortunately. On the Republican side, 31,000 votes cast here. A pretty competitive race, and it looks like John McCain is going to have himself a pretty tough battle come November, but a seat that can potentially go Republican and could be a competitive race. It is listed as likely Democrat, and the fact that the Democrats have the incumbency advantage here in a state like New Jersey, you would feel like at the end of the day that Democrats are probably going to be able to keep this district as well. So moving on down through the rest of the list here, and we don't have any for New Mexico. So now we're going to go over to the lean Democrat results. None for California, none for Iowa, none for Montana, and New Jersey, we have the 2nd district, and then also none for New Mexico. So going up to the 2nd district here, and this is what I'd like to see, a nice competitive primary on both sides of things. In the Democrats, you had about 28,000 votes, and on the Republican side, nearly 26,000 votes. So the Democratic primary had about 2.5 thousand more votes than the Republican side. And like I said, this is in a lean Democratic district, so that is looking pretty positive for the Democrats here, just looking at the primary numbers and how the voter turnout looked. So that's going to wrap things up just for these likely Democrat and lean Democrat seats. So these are ones that the Democrats already have in the House of Representatives that they're going to be trying to hold on. So now we're going to move down to the toss-up Democrat and toss-up Republican seats. And as you can see, we're not going to be touching on any in the toss-up Democrat seats because there's only 2 of them, and they're both in Minnesota. So the rest of them are going to be seats that Republicans are trying to hold on from here on out, and Democrats are going to be trying to flip these seats. So starting off with California, a number of them here. We have the California 10th, so that's where we're going to start. And going down here, it looks like a Democrat and a Republican were both able to finish in the 1 and 2 slots. And it looks like we had a lot of people running on both sides of things. The incumbent Republican was able to pick up nearly 38% of the votes. Also, the 3rd place vote getter was also a Republican. So you add that on to the total, you get up to about 34,000 votes, and then the Democrats, you have about 10,000 votes plus 7, so 17,000 votes, 23,000 votes, 29,000 votes, 31, so about 31,000 votes on the Democrat side, and you compare that over to about the 34,000 votes that the Republicans got. So as you can see, very competitive between the primary result between the Democrats and Republicans. The incumbent gets a nice little boost here, grabs 37.7% of the vote with a lot of people in this race. But if you're an incumbent and you don't get at least 50% of the vote, that's not necessarily a great sign for you. And we had a very similar vote number cast on both sides. I think this is going to be a very competitive race and ones that the Democrats look to take over. And all of these Republican toss-up seats, a number of them, by and large, went for Hillary Clinton back in the 2016 general election over Donald Trump, which is why the Democrats are so positive on their chances at potentially picking up a number of these districts. So it'll be interesting to see how this District 10 plays out in California. Moving on down to the California 25th District. So we'll go down and find that one. And it looks like the incumbent was able to get over 50% of the vote, so a pretty solid start there just by looking at the numbers on the onset. And then we had all Democrats running for the other spot. So if you add up all of that Democratic primary vote, and you get up to about 48%. So expected to be very competitive, and another seat that's going to be tough for the Republicans to hold on to, but their incumbent getting over 50% of the vote, at least a good sign initially here in the primary result. And then moving on to the California 39th, and this is going to be an open situation. So let's scroll down and find that one. All right, so you have the GOP winning this one outright with 21.9% of the vote, and you have a Democrat getting second with 19.4%. And it looks like these guys were able to separate themselves from the rest of the pack, and just a crazy number of people, it looks like, ran in this particular district. So this is going to be a pretty competitive one. And if you just add up all of these numbers on both sides of things, you're going to get to a very close split. You have the GOP in first place, third place, and fifth and sixth place in comparison to the Democrats, who are second, fourth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. So if you add up all their votes on both sides, a pretty competitive situation. It's going to be very interesting to see how this one plays out. Moving on to California's 48th district. And the incumbent on the GOP side was able to grab 30% of the vote in another one of those just crazy jungle primaries where it looks like too many people have decided to run in some of these cases. But the Democrats able to get into this general election with their candidates getting 17.3 and 17.2% of the vote. So an extremely close race there for second place. And then the GOP grabbing the fourth place spot, Democrats fifth, GOP 6th, Democrats 7th, and it kind of just alternates throughout the rest of how this plays out. This is one of those seats that I'd be kind of surprised if it didn't go over to the Democrats. And if you just look at their numbers, it's pretty competitive here in terms of the votes that we got on each side for the California. This is the 48th district. And now moving on to the next one, the California 49th, which is an open seat. This is the one that Issa was... he won it last time around. What was the closest congressional race, and it was against Doug Applegate. Unfortunately, Applegate not going to be running on the Democratic side this time around because he got fourth. And this was one of those particular districts where the Democrats were a little bit concerned that they had too many strong candidates that were going to split the vote so much that maybe a GOP would slide into that second place slot, and that wasn't the case. So you have the GOP getting the top spot here at 25.5% of the vote, but then the Democrats getting second, third, and fourth place. And if you add up the vote here as well, very competitive on both sides. And another one of those districts that I'd be kind of surprised if the Democrats weren't able to pick this one up come the 2018 general election, especially because there isn't an incumbent on the Republican side for the 49th district. Okay, so that's going to be all of the California ones that are listed as toss-up Republican. Now we move down and we see Iowa, the first district here, so we'll go check that one out. And the Republican incumbent ran unopposed. And then on the Democrat side, you had 44,000 votes in total, with the Democrat winner here pulling out pretty far in front of the rest of the competition. Looks like a pretty strong candidate there, getting nearly 30,000 votes, about 67% of the vote. This should be a very competitive district. And if the Democrats expect to reclaim control of the House of Representatives after not having it, I think since obviously they won it in the 2008 election, but then the Republicans took it back in 2010, I believe. But if they're going to mount a surge here, this is definitely the kind of district that they need to pick up in a state like Iowa. Should be a pretty competitive race here and a tough one for the incumbent. All right, guys, moving on down here, looking for Montana. We don't have that one in here. New Jersey, we have the 7th district and the 11th district. Going down to the 7th district, and we have a competitive primary on both sides of things, and this is a really good sign here for the Democrats. You have 39,000 votes cast in that Democratic primary, and then the Republican primary, only 33,000. They did have an incumbent there on the Republican side, so they're going to have that inherent advantage with the incumbent, but it looks like the challenger here on the Democratic side is going to be rearing to take this seat. He was able to grab 26,000 votes, so that's already better than what the Republican incumbent was able to do. And the Democrats outperforming the Republicans here by about 6,000 votes. So this one is looking really good on the Democrats' side of things. And now moving on down to the 11th district, and again, another competitive primary on both sides here, and another great sign for the Democrats. You have 45,000 votes cast on their side, 42,000 on the Republican side, and the top primary vote getter on the Democrat side was able to get 35,000 votes in comparison to the Republican top voter at 16,000. So this is another one of those districts that's already looking really good for the Democrats and their ability to flip this one over to their side just by looking at the numbers. So that's going to wrap up New Jersey for this part. And then we also looking at New Mexico here, and there's none for New Mexico in this area as well. So now we're going to go down to the lean Republican and likely Republican areas. So the lean Republican, we have California's 21st and 45th. So before we get to the 21st, since we're already here, we'll look at the 45th. And the GOP incumbent getting over 50% of the vote, so a good sign early on there from the GOP. And then all the rest of the candidates, it looks like 4 out of the 5 were Democrats. So in terms of the vote split here, you're getting maybe about 45% of the vote or so for if you add up all of what the Democrats were able to do in this race. So a pretty good sign here for the GOP, definitely in comparison to some of those New Jersey districts that we just looked at. So now moving on to California's 21st district. So there's just a ton of districts in the state of California. Okay, so here we go. And it looks like we didn't have any competitive situation here. You're just going to have the Democrat and the Republican both advancing to the general election. Unfortunately, no data for us to dissect and look at for this one, so we're going to be moving on to our next results. So we look on here, and the next one's going to be the Iowa 3rd. So going up to Iowa and the 3rd district, the incumbent ran unopposed, and then on the Democrat side, Cindy Axne gets with 58% overall, and then 55,000 voters on the Democrats' side here. And unfortunately, we don't have any data to compare it against. Should be interesting, again, to see how this kind of race plays out. Moving on down here, let's see if we have any of these other states. So Montana, nope. I think Montana is going to be in the next round over, though. And then New Jersey, the New Jersey 3rd district, and then we also have a New Mexico 2nd district here. So let's go to the New Jersey one. And unfortunately, both candidates running unopposed, so we don't have any data for this one. And then moving on to New Mexico, and that was the 2nd district, which is an open situation. And on the Democrat side, you have 34,693 votes. On the Republican side, 32,268 votes. So already a great sign here for the Democrats. They were able to outperform the Republicans, getting about a little over 2,000 more votes on their side of things. And also their candidate that went on to win picked up 25,000 votes, over 72%. And then the winner on the Republican side you have 15,000 votes, so nearly 10,000 votes less for the winner in the Republican primary. But still, the Democrats getting more of the total votes. That's a pretty good sign for them in what's currently listed as a likely Republican seat, or no, a lean Republican seat, excuse me, on that one. And then the last category is the likely Republican. So looking on this one, we have the California 4th District. And unfortunately, we have to go from the 4th District all the way to the 50th after this one. That's going to be a lot of scrolling here. And the incumbent on the GOP side was able to win with over 50% of the vote. So a really positive sign there for this candidate, grabbing nearly 65,000 votes. And in this jungle primary, 124,000 votes, so some pretty good turnout there overall. The Democrats are going to have a lot of work to do to try to close this gap, but it should be a relatively competitive race. It'll be interesting to see how this one goes. And now scrolling all the way down to the 50th district here in the state of California. And the GOP incumbent was able to pick up 43,000 votes. And this was a district that had a really unfortunate situation. The Democrat who ended up winning, I'm actually really glad that this guy was able to get that second place spot here, because some of the attacks against him, especially from the GOP, but also even the establishment Democrats, have been really scummy and mudslinging. And it's just nice to see this guy go on to win. He doesn't take that corporate PAC money, a very progressive agenda. It should be very interesting to see how he's able to compete against an incumbent, and the incumbent getting under 50% of the vote here, but there was also a couple of other GOP candidates in this race, so that took a bit away from him as well. And it'll also be interesting to see if the establishment Democrats really get behind Amar and his attempt to try to flip this seat over to the Democrats. And the establishment Democrats, it almost seems like they'd rather have a progressive lose to a Republican than fight for it. So it'll just be interesting to see how that plays itself out, if Amar is able to get a little bit of support from the establishment Democrats, or if they just kind of leave him out on his own for this one, and he'll just take that progressive support and see if that's enough to make this one extremely competitive and maybe even flip this one over. But going to be a tough climb for him. It's just really nice to see a candidate like that, who had so much unfairness thrown at him leading up to this primary, be able to grab that second place spot here for the Democrats. All right, guys, now moving on here, we have none for Iowa, and then Montana. I believe that one's going to be here. Yep, so here's Gianforte. We'll go over to Montana, and Gianforte infamously body slamming a reporter back during the special election, and that was after a vast majority of the votes had already been cast, I believe, in that situation with the early vote. So the Democrat in that special election, not able to close the gap, but it was still pretty competitive. In a state like Montana, you can certainly get Democrats to win a statewide election. We've seen that with John Tester, who's currently the senator there, and the Democrats going to be trying to do whatever they can to pick this one up. So we had 110,000 votes on their side for this primary, and that's significantly lower than the vote total that we saw on both sides back during the special election, but not a big surprise to see primary numbers quite a bit lower than when you have a special election between one Democrat and one Republican running against each other, and what was more of a nationally aware race for whatever that's worth. So also another one of those races that if the Republicans are truly going to lose their advantage in the House of Representatives, if they fall in a state like this, that's going to be one of those where you look at it and say, okay, we definitely are going to get a blue wave in this scenario, but I'm not predicting that. Gianforte is now the incumbent. He has a ton of money behind his candidacy, and that's probably certainly enough to get him over the line in a state like Montana, which tends to lean a little bit more Republican, and one that went for Trump by a rather wide margin. So let's see if we have any others on our list here. So New Jersey doesn't look like, and then New Mexico, it also doesn't look like we have any in the likely Republican camp. So we've just gone through and touched on every single primary race and how the numbers played out for the more likely competitive congressional races here come 2018 November time. And I got these numbers from the Cook Political Report, which is a great resource. I'll link this down in the video description if you want to check it out. And I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more and check out all of our coverage videos on our YouTube channel. Thanks, guys, for stopping on in, and we hope to see you back here for future videos. Bye.